Time has influence on everyone. Any situation or process changes with time. Such changes create greater impact and history. Have you wondered what the history of humans is? This pattern shows how man evolved over ages. Evolution flips something that is rare into common and something that is common into rare after some time. Let us take a case study to learn more about it. Edelston was an English naturalist who studied peppered moths where the majority is light-colored. Light-colored pepper moths could camouflage along with the birch trees where they lived. But he recorded something unusual in 1848. Today, I caught an almost totally black peppered moth near the center of Manchester. It was also the time when there was extensive industrial revolution accompanied by burning of coal to get fuel. The trees which were lighter were now dark. By 1900, the peppered moth populations in the areas around England cities were as much as 98% dark moths. Why do you think it happened? Let us have an activity to know more about the peppered moths. Here is a dark forest with dark trees as a habitat for 50% light peppered moths and 50% black peppered moths. You be the predator and click on the moths to eat as many as you can. Initially, you started off with 50% of light moths and 50% of dark moths. Now, you are left with 82% of dark moths and 18% of light moths. Why do you think it happened so? The predator was able to catch the light-colored moths easily, whereas the dark moths adapted to the dark forest by camouflage. Recall the study of camouflage. It helps in better survival from the predator. It is an adaptation by the moths for better survival, and the color was genetic and passed on to generations. Black peppered moths definitely had an advantage in the blackened forest. Such a change in the moths is as a result of natural selection. We see that the natural selection is exerted by the environment like the industrial pollution and the predator. But natural selection and survival is not the only mechanism of evolution. Imagine if by chance the dark forest was set on fire by accident and the dark moth population would reduce. And there will be very few light-colored moths outside the forest which will slowly increase in number. Such an evolution was not an advantage or an adaptation. It was a mere accident of reduction of black moths and increase of light moths. Accidents in small populations can change the frequency of some genes in a population, even if they give no survival advantage. This is the notion of genetic drift, which provides density without any adaptations. Let us take another case of where the peppered moths hide from the predators in the crevices of the wood. But after a few years, the population of the predators reduces. Then, would the generations coming later learn the characteristic of hiding in the crevices? There is no relation by which the moths will evolve with trait of hiding. Such a change is not inherited over generations. What traits are inherited and what are not inherited? To make this simpler, there are some traits that you can be born with without even having the right to choose whether you want them or not. These are basically irreversible and are inherited traits. There are other traits that you can learn and are passed on to you through teachings. Learning how to sing, using a musical instrument, or even painting are some traits that you can decide whether you want to learn. These are called acquired traits. In the genetic level, we can sum up as any change which needs to evolve must be at the DNA level of the germ cell. The changes in the non-reproductive cells cannot be passed on to the DNA of the germ cells. Here are some fruit flies. When the fruit flies breed, there is a gene flow amongst the population. However, if they get separated by a barrier, then there is less breeding amongst them and less gene flow. Imagine now the populations are separated by a large river, allowing not much chances of gene exchange. The two populations become isolated. Slowly, they develop into different species, leading to speciation by geographic isolation. Effectively, new species of flies are generated. Another case of geographic isolation has been that of the bonobo. Bonobo is endangered and is found in the wild only in the Democratic Republic of Congo. Bonobos look very similar to chimpanzees. Because the two species are not proficient swimmers, it is possible that the formation of the Congo River 1.5 to 2 million years ago led to the speciation of the bonobo. Have a look at the scientific classification of them. Observe how evolution has influenced in their classification. Recall, classification is done by taking the most fundamental characters of the organisms. We trace human evolution to chimpanzees. Now that we know about bonobos, we can also trace back human relations to the bonobos. You can now draw inference that classification of organisms is in fact a reflection of their evolutionary relationship. How do we draw evolutionary relationship? If we look at the chimpanzee, bonobo and a human, the basic characteristics like the limbs, etc. suggest ancestry. This doesn't mean that the organs looking similar will have close ancestry. Take a look at the wings of a bat and a bird. What can you observe? Taking a closer look, we can say that the wings of the bats are skin folds stretched mainly between elongated fingers, but the wings of the birds are a feathery covering all along the arm. These structures look similar and have a common use for flying, but their origins are not common and hence are analogous structures. Have a look at the fins of dolphins and the forelimbs of the humans. Can you notice any similarity? Inside the pectoral fins, dolphins have a skeletal structure similar to a human arm and hand. These structures may have different functions but derived from similar origins and are called as homologous structures. We must have watched the dinosaurs in the movies, but they lived millions of years ago. How do you think man discovered the existence of dinosaurs? There are some skeletal structures which have been found embedded in the deep soil of the earth, which serves as an evidence for the existence of such organisms. These are called fossils. Fossils can be any traces of the living organisms, like an imprint in the soil left by dead animals. How do we get to know the age of fossils? A crude way of knowing will be by estimating the age depending on the depth at which it has been found on the earth. A rather precise way of finding out the age of the fossil is by a technique called carbon dating, where the ratios of different isotopes of the same element in the fossil material are detected. Your eye facilitates to see this graphic. Have you wondered how a complex organ like eye would have evolved? Take a look at the eyes of planarians, octopus and human eye. The structure of eye is such that in each of these organisms it is different enough for them to have separate evolutionary origins. Comparing the DNA of the different species should give us a direct estimate of how much the DNA has changed to trace evolutionary relationships. Can we compare the DNAs of the humans as well as the chimpanzees to know the evolutionary relationships? Yes, the DNA chromosomal studies have revealed that the chimps are the closest relatives of humans, but not the ancestors. Humans and chimps have had a divergent evolution from a common ancestor. A new study of genes in humans and chimpanzees pins down with greater accuracy when the two species split from one. The evolutionary divergence occurred between 5 million and 7 million years ago. In fact, studies of human evolution traces back to Africa regardless of the races we come from, be it white, brown or black. About 100,000 years ago, some of the ancestors left from Africa and spread across the planet. Does that mean that humans form the pinnacle of evolution? Evolution has led to complex designs, but it doesn't mean that the old is outcasted. Some of the primitive organisms like bacteria, like the superbug and virus, still pose a constant challenge to mankind. Like all other species on planet, humans had to come into being as an accident of evolution. In fact, evolution is just shaping the diversity by environmental selection and cannot be equated to progress.